Hi, and welcome to Piano Teaching Success Q&A. I'm Gillian Erskine, and together with my colleague Paul Myatt, we've created this program so you can get answers to your questions. We're so excited to be here today with our lovely guests, and as usual, we have quite a mix of countries represented today on our panel, and we always seem to have quite a lot of viewers from many different countries as well. So if you're watching us live, please let us know where you're coming from in our chat. And the chat is right down the bottom of your screen. There's a little button there. If you press the button, the chat will come up on the side. Well, I'm so excited to be introducing our panel today. Let me introduce Bradley Sowash. Bradley joins us from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio in the States. Bradley is a composer and teacher and co-founder of the 88 Keys, which conducts PD workshops for piano teachers. Bradley is also a whiz at teaching jazz and creativity, so I'm hoping he can share some tips with us later today around that. Welcome, Bradley.
Thank you. And just give it a shot here. I have never heard that theme till now, but I just want to try this. I was surprised.
Thank you. Melody Deng joins us from Auckland and New Zealand, where they are officially virus-free. Oh! Melody has some fresh, fabulous ideas on integrating apps and games into lessons to make them fun. Melody is also very techy and was a digital creator of Bit for Piano ebook you saw a couple of weeks ago. Welcome, Melody.
Thank you, Gillian. It's really lovely to be here.
Our pleasure. Brad Eustace joins us from Melbourne in Australia. Brad is a composer, publisher, music technologist, and piano teacher. Many of Bradley's works have been listed in exam syllabuses, and whilst Bradley still teaches a few students who he says just won't leave him, these days Bradley is working at Yamaha Music Australia and fills his day with teaching, composing, and arranging as well. So welcome.
Hello,
Brad.
everyone. Great to be here.
Terrific. Well, like we do each week, we're going to kick off today's show by visiting each of our panelists in their home studios, so you can see their setup and ask them questions. Let's start with Bradley Sowash, and we have a video of Bradley in teaching, actually live in action, teaching online. So let's go to that.
I made this yesterday. I think it's pretty good, right? Let's just look at that rhythm for a minute. Ba ba da da da. Batman da da da. What you do is you sneak in the bass line in both hands right there in the end. And then here's your last chord. If you know what it is, unmute and say it with me, which is
Enjoy your
journey.
Maybe I'll see you in the full course, and thanks. Keep making.
Thanks, Bradley.
Bye. So Bradley, we've also got a photograph of your studio.
Okay.
Haven't we? So show us your mask.
Oh, got to show us the mask. Yeah, I like to use props. So you saw the Pink Panther mask. It's I'm sorry, the Batman mask. It's just a piece of cardboard. And then I'm teaching Pink Panther today to my students, and so we wore this. And it's all at the moment. I'm teaching. The whole course is about secret agents. So we're searching for clues.
Actually, I really love your little prop that you had there as well with the rhythm.
Yeah, that's called a rhythm board. I teach rhythm by location rather than duration. That's a whole philosophy. More like a drummer learns to play rhythm. Where does it lie in the measure? And that board, I have one here, as a matter of fact, that helps illuminate the measure.
Did you make that at your little workshop over on your farm, or did you, or is that something you can buy?
Yeah, well, I don't believe it's available in Australia. I just make these on the side. It's a little thing I make in my shop, and it's just fun.
You do make them. So you do make them yourself? I
do. Yeah, I'm a woodworker, so I have all these musical oddities. So
yeah. It's so good to have that visual thing, because really, as you say, the drummer might do it that way, but we're visually in the music. That's the way it turns up, doesn't it? Halfway
right
through a bar.
I mean, I'll give you a tiny walkthrough real quick. You use it with marbles, so we use these marbles with it. And let's just say that this is one measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So London Bridge is falling down. You put a marble here, 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 and here. London Bridge with that dotted note, London. That would be on the and. It just as a way to visualize rhythms that off the written page.
Yeah. And the one you used in there is a different board, I think, the one you used to use with Batman.
Yeah, it depends on what finish I have available as to what color they are. It's there.
Oh, no, it didn't have da, 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 da. I thought it was different. Or maybe it was that one.
No, it was just a different rhythm because it was the Batman rhythm. Yeah. So
we got to let's have a look at the photo of your studio, and you can walk us through what you got there.
Yeah, that's where I'm sitting right now. But you see the black background behind me is a sort of a screen that's behind me, and then there's this room that looks like what my wife describes as a music store that fell through the ceiling. They used to teach group lessons in here, and you can see there's jazz posters all about and so on. And then I started teaching occasionally online. And then about 4 years ago, I think that I was the first person in the world to teach group lessons online. Certainly the first person to teach group jazz piano lessons online. And so that's just my setup. You see a little corner of my drum set and the whiteboard and the extra laptop there's to play backing tracks. And this is a typical online setup, the overhead camera. And I can do a quick shift to that right at the moment. Let's see, 2. Yeah, maybe not. But anyway, I can switch cameras, and it's good. It's a good setup.
It is a good setup. So you've got 2 laptops, an overhead camera. So do you use one laptop? Yeah, because you've got one where they come in visually. So you're just switching between views all the time. Right.
I mean, one's for music, one's for visual, and then there's a mixer off to the side. And
do you do Manicam or OBS, or do you just do Zoom? Or
yeah, sorry, for the platform I use Zoom. Yeah, and it's got the the camera above, and then right now I'm just working through the laptop's camera. I find that the least the simpler a setup is, the less problems you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you can relate to that.
Keep it simple. Well, thank you very much for showing us that. Melody, let's visit your studio. Can you tell us about your journey into online teaching? Were you doing this? Are you new to this, or were you doing this before?
I've actually never really taught online lessons before. I've had this odd Skype lessons here and there, but I very much prefer the in-person sort of lessons. So this was my studio when New Zealand was in lockdown. So I had my laptop set up on the bar stool with a whole bunch of folders and books. I have my microphone set up there, so I'm not really shouting into the screen. I've got my laptop connected with a bigger screen on the grand piano, so I could see their hands a little bit better. And I've also got the screen sharing on my iPad going, so it's easier to just tell the students, okay, this is the bit I want you to practice 5 times. Or when you're teaching theory, that having that visual tool to teach it just makes my life so much easier.
Yeah. That's terrific. And I can see those wipes on that other piano there. Or is this now? Right. Oh, this is the under construction one, right?
Sorry, what was that?
We've got on the under construction.
Yeah, so one of the lockdown projects that we decided we'll take on is to renovate a new studio with a new kitchenette, a new office, and a new bathroom attached. And we said to ourselves, yeah, we'll get it done in the 4 weeks in the lockdown. We did not get it done in 4 weeks.
Best laid plans. It'll get done. It will get done.
Yeah, we're in the pianos next week. So it's a little bit of a mess right now. But I think once it's finished, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. So have you had any real students back into your studio?
Yes, to my relief. I mean, I've enjoyed the odd challenge and reward when it comes to online lessons. But for me, I just love that personal interaction with my students. And yeah, after about 6 or 7 weeks of not seeing them in real person, they actually all come in, they've all grown up a little bit, and it's magical to have them back in the studio. Yeah.
I bet you it is. Thank you. Bradley Eustace. Let's have a look at your studio. Now, Bradley, I'm expecting lots of lovely instruments that start with a Y.
That might happen. Yeah.
So we've got a lovely Yamaha Clavinova there.
Yeah, and a Genos, and actually out of shot is a PSRSX. The CVP is the workhorse as far as teaching. I actually keep it really simple because I found I suppose it's got to do with in the way you teach. You continue that same way even though you're on the online form. And so I actually just put the laptop actually on top of the clav facing, and then occasionally I'll put it to the side. But I do a lot of, I use a program called Internet MIDI, which actually connects my digital piano. Just so happens, funny that most of my students have a clav at home, and it connects directly to them. So what they play comes through my instrument and vice versa. So completely. And the other thing that's great is it also on the screen, it actually shows the keys as they're playing it. So when you're trying to do like one note legato, one note staccato in the same hand, you can visually see that because of that direct connection, and as well as hearing it. So I found that to be very, very useful tool as far as.
And it's the room with the view.
Yes, it's quite a. I took that shot. That's my view. It's
really,
yeah, it's terrible.
Someone has to do it, Brad.
Yeah, horrible working conditions, and yeah, I can only teach at night after work. So yeah, obviously I have the lights on when I'm teaching, obviously, but yeah, you can see out when there's no lights. But yeah, it's cool.
That's really nice. Okay, well, let's move on to some questions now. This question came in last week, and it's from Mark, and it's, what is your view on using tablets for reading sheet music when playing or practicing? I've seen people use this, but I'm not sure what tablet or screen size is screen-wise would be the best, which apps are recommended for sheet music, and also apparently there's a foot pedal attachment for switching pages if you didn't want to do it with the swipe. Could you shed any light on such gadgets? Thank you. So what about you, Brad?
Yeah, I use the iPad Pro personally, simply because I started on the iPad, and the iPad Pro, I think as you get a bit older, it gets a bit easier to see. I don't bother with the foot switch because I do a lot of traveling, and it's just one less thing to forget. I actually just found it's just easier to swipe. The other option I do use is ironically, a lot of the music will display inside the instrument itself. So the students will just read straight off the piano. And it turns the page for them as they play automatically.
Say that again. What's this?
So the score. So on the Clavinova that was in the photo there, if you use a MIDI file, it actually displays the notated score,
right,
and it will play straight on there as well. That's another way. It's cool. It's cool.
But if you don't have that,
yeah, iPad's the go.
Yeah. And you use also for doing theory, because you do quite a bit of theory classes and stuff.
Yeah, so I use an aural app, and it's yeah. Actually, is Paul gonna share?
Paul gonna do that? Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really cool. Like for online, anyone, it's totally free. There are upgrades for it as well. But the thing I like with the aural app is that the kids can join in on their iPad or on their computer, but iPad or anything with tablet based is much better. And then basically you can, they can draw a stave, they can put things on there. So I might have a group class of theory. So we might do a session on what we might be doing some harmony or things like that, or scale drawing. And then other kids might be having an individual problem. So they can set up their own whiteboard, and then I can actually have a look at that whiteboard at that particular student. The great thing is you can import. So if you click the plus, you can import, and then also you can export the board as well. So if you did some notes on theory or something like that, then you can export. So it's a really great teaching resource in that context.
Particularly good if you had an iPad, a bit like what Melody has with the iPad set up.
Yeah.
You're not using it as your prime teaching thing, and the kids they're all on iPads, so you can beam into them, right?
Yeah, and it solves the problem. It seems to be a trend now that people don't have printers or if they do have a printer, the student doesn't have any ink, or they don't have any paper to actually print anything. So this, they can just use the device, and we can get our theory still done. So it overcomes that. There's new problems in the world. We don't have ink.
Oh dear. And you use this with your classes too, so
yeah,
one-to-many, one-to-one.
Yes, yeah. So there's just I use Skype for the visual, and they just make sure that they're actually engaged when we're doing theory, and they're not just, and then and then we do that. So I've sprung a few students sometimes too. It's quite funny. Like, we'll do the screen sharing, and then they say, "Oh, can you show me your screen, what you're working on?" And there was a game. I say, "Oh, sprung." So you should have at least, got it off the game before you shared your screen.
Yeah, that was...
Oh my goodness. Anyway, it's all good fun. It keeps you young. You got to keep on the toes.
Exactly. Melody, what about you? Do you use iPad?
I've got an iPad Pro as well. In terms of screen size, I think for us musicians, it's a case where the bigger is better. It's just, when it's at almost like an A4 size of screen, it's just easier to read the notes. Yeah. And I do have the foot pedal. And I think it did take me a while to get used to it.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of second nature now. My left foot's got a pedal that it's constantly going to as well. But it's just life-changing. I mean, like whenever I attend master classes or workshops, I just load the music I know people are going to be using that day. And so when I was a university student, I would take stacks of books from the library. But now it's just so easy to have everything on the iPad. Yeah, I can't live without it.
That's good. Bradley, what about you? Are you into iPads?
Yeah, I mean, I use iPads a lot, but not in the way that we've discussed here. I'm a jazzer. I don't use written music most of the time, literally. So my iPad go-to is a program called, or a soft app, I should call it, iReal Pro, which you type in a few chords for those of you who don't know it, and then you select a style and a key, and it plays it back for you. And I have one up right now. So if I'm going to play a blues, and maybe I'm teaching a blues. Okay, so that sounds okay. But if I can put it with a 1, 2, 3. So I got the iPad playing all that band, etc. So the cool thing about it is
we'd all like to do that.
So I send those files. I ask the students to have that same app, and then I'm able to create files on it, and I send them so they are able to play with a backing track. And the advantage of that, as many of us know who've taught online, is that unfortunately, even with Internet MIDI, it's a little clunky to play duets. Which is the part I most love about in-person teaching. So to compensate for that online by sharing this shared backing track, they can start it on their end. They know exactly where they are and what they're doing with it, and I can kind of customize that. So I just couldn't really teach without iReal Pro. And let me just show my other gadget. My most favorite gadget is, you ready for this? It's very high-tech.
Ta-da!
A whiteboard. I've experimented with those doodles and those whiteboards and stuff, and I just find it pretty easy to write what I want and hold it up to the screen. So just for those of you who are new to online teaching, that actually works pretty well, especially when I have a way to show my hands as well on the piano. I can set it down there. And I just got a new one. I did a talk on whiteboards on my monthly Facebook tip of the month, improv tip of the month, and a company called Easy Notes, because I guess I'm an influencer, sent me this. I haven't used it yet, but it's they said, well, since you like whiteboards so much, ours has the notation on it. So I haven't used this yet, but I have a feeling it's going to have a sweet little home here in my side table.
What's on the back
so
of
iReal
that?
Pro.
Is there anything on the back of that?
Yeah, so it just came. It's Easy Notes Easy, and then it has on the back is some I have some slots here, and then it came with magnets of various rhythms. So And there's a bunch of other magnets. I haven't quite worked out how to use it yet, but I'll probably just use a dry eraser on it as a quick way. And I can tell you one more if you have just a moment.
Yeah.
Since Brad talked about Internet MIDI, which is made by our friend George Litterst at Time Warp Technologies, I just love Classroom Maestro, which is another one that he's made. I have it here in front of me, and I'm very happy to endorse that because it's just marvelous. Suppose because I teach a lot of chords, so here's C minor, and I'm not literally playing this, and it's notating as I play it. And so I can really just quickly show voicings and jazz chords and things like that.
Yeah, that's really helpful, isn't it? Particularly with what you're doing, to just explain, instantly they can see exactly what you're playing.
Right. So for a jazzer, it's all about, voice it this way, put these chords in, and it's wonderful. Yeah. And since I teach a lot of reading musicians, it bridges that gap. They want to see the notes and hear them at the same time. So those are my favorites.
Yeah, they're great tips. Thank you so much. Well, Melody, speaking about iPads, you shared a really great way to incorporate Noterush in your presentation at APPC last year, middle of the year, which is the Australasian Piano Pedagogy Conference. Could you show us that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I actually got the inspiration from one of my students. He's a really smart student. He likes to take shortcuts. And he sort of bounced into the studio one day and he said, Melody, I found a cheat way of going through the Noterush notes that you assigned me. Did you know that instead of playing it on the piano, you could just sing it, and that's way faster, and you don't have to find the notes on the piano? And I thought, oh, actually, he's got a point. It's actually something that I could use to my advantage as a teacher. So I'm just going to see if I could get that iPad sharing going. So I'm sure a lot of teachers already know about this app. I use it all the time with all sorts of different levels. But so I thought, actually, with students that perhaps don't have perfect pitch, we really need to hone in on their relative pitch. So it's actually a really good exercise for them to recognize the notes and then sing with their relative pitch. So for example, we've got these 5 notes that we've selected, and I always make sure to select the notes that are within the voice range of that student. So if we press go, we'll get a reference note. La, 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 la.
Nice.
Seconds.
That's great.
You got 100% there, girl.
No pressure.
Yeah, so it's turned into a little bit of a game that I do with my students, that if they learn some new notes and I know if it's within the range of their voice, we just sing it. And I often sing it with my students, especially the ones who feel a little bit, sort of uncomfortable with using their voice. I just sing louder than them until they feel comfortable. Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, other ways of using this app I found really useful is actually teaching key signatures. So for example, if I assign an E major scale to a particular student, I get them to practice on the piano. I also select the notes with the sharps in Noterush. So for that week, they are practicing E major scale on the piano. They're also practicing reading the notes of the E major key. And I think like incorporating the two systems together, it's worked really, really well in terms of sight reading.
Yes, and they like to do little app games like that.
Love it. Yeah.
It's fantastic. We have another question, and it's from Emma Smith, who lives in Halstead in UK. And her question is, I have a 7-year-old beginner who's quite dyslexic and is finding it hard to play via note names. She only likes playing tunes that I make up for her via finger numbers. Have you any advice? Well, Bradley Sowash, I'm wondering, I looked at your bio and I think you might have been an ear player when you were a kid. Is that right?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. I had the mandatory piano lessons that were the fashion, and I wish there were as a kid. And so on the one hand, I'm learning to read with my scary old teacher, and on the other hand, on Friday nights at my house, we had jam sessions playing like When the Saints Go Marching In. and my dad, handed me a trombone and saying, find some notes that sound good there. So there was a disconnect growing up. I don't go too deep into it, but I felt like there was sort of learning this written music, which was this almost sort of like a math class or something. It was very like knowledgeable, and this other way where we're just making music on the spot. And so it was really both, and I'm really thankful for both. In fact, I'll just share this. This is my favorite image to describe my teaching philosophy, and is my own education, which is the equal balance between playing by eye or reading music and playing by ear. To me, the musicians who can do that equally, and hardly anyone can, we all have a favorite, that is what a balanced musician is capable of, and that's what a balanced curriculum looks like. But for most people, there is a continuum here. I think you can think of it another way, as classical meaning traditional, and non-classical meaning everything else, bluegrass or jazz or whatever, or rock and roll, etc. And then there's playing by reading and playing by your ear. And I think everybody would place themselves somewhere on this spectrum. And I think the goal here is to be right there, where we're very comfortable reading classical, meaning any written music, and non-classical is very well. So it's just two different ways to show it. For me, it was a struggle all the time hiding from my teacher that I was jamming out, and then kind of the other way. Now I regularly go to until COVID. I went to fiddle and mandolin or Irish sessions, basically Irish music I love, and they were saying, why are you pulling out music? We play by ear here. So it seems to be a strange little disconnect or disrespect between the two approaches to making music, where I find them equally valuable.
Yes, exactly. So I know you teach mostly adults. I'm not sure whether you've had any people who have been a bit dyslexic or not. Do you have?
So I tend to get students who are, because I'm a jazz and improv specialist, I sometimes get the kids who are on the spectrum, I guess, who are a little bit savant, a little bit, let's use the word musically gifted. And I have a lot of trouble with these terms such as talent and so on, because I really know to be a fact from many years of teaching off-page playing that it can be learned. It's a cop-out to say, oh, you're just born knowing how to improvise. But at the same time, of course, we all know there are those sort of mini geniuses for whom Melody mentioned perfect pitch. That's one of a whole catalog of things that some students seem to have innately. And when they have a whole pile of those of just very high musical intelligences, I sometimes get sent them because no one's exactly quite sure what to do with them. And I do find those kinds of students pretty hard to teach. I can think of a specific story where I said, we're going to play Satin Doll, D minor, G, and the 9-year-old said, well, that's not the voicing that Duke Ellington played on the album. So it can work both ways. His ears were so keen that I said, well, what did Duke Ellington play? Show me that. I guess I do occasionally get this sort of musical oddballs, and I enjoy that, but also find them challenging. I won't pretend that it's not a handful. I feel like at the end of those lessons, I'm a cartoon with smoke coming out of my ears, and I'm just like, ah! So.
They push challenges. Well, kids, all different sorts of reasons can push challenges in that all those ways, and dyslexia is one of those challenges, and auditory sequencing issues are another one. Brad, what would you suggest? I got two Bradleys here. I got a Brad and a Brad.
I've actually taught quite a few dyslexic and also ADHD students, and so had to involve quite a lot of games with them to activate them, and actually breaking down the elements of the problem. And this one, to me, the first stepping stone, I think, is actually the keyboard geography, actually just finding the notes on the key and making a real fun game of it. So I actually had my stepmom make a dice that with the letters on it, A, B, C, D, F, G, and a smiley face for the extra side. And basically they roll a dice, this big dice, it's a huge, about 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. and then quickly find all the Fs or the Gs. So it's more of it's just getting into that keyboard geography. And you time them and you say, oh, that was, and then you'll give them negative marks for every wrong note. And it becomes a real, so they might get 20 seconds and then 10 seconds. It becomes a real game. It's taking away that element, and then we go back to the keyboard. But it's more about the game.
Smiley face. What happens if the smiley face turns
Well, they
up?
get to choose. They really want the smiley face, don't they?
Do they have to play a note and then tell you what it is? Is that what happens?
No. So they roll the dice, and then say if it rolls onto the letter C, they have to find all the C's up the piano as fast as they can. But I make it so that they have to run to the piano. We don't put them right next to the piano. So we pull the chair away within safety. And then we, on the other side of the room, we have to run to the piano and quickly find all the notes. And then, it just makes
a winner that. Running?
Just
running
livens it up. Otherwise, you're just sitting at the piano the whole time. It's a bit of fun for everyone. And,
wish you had been my teacher. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was the opposite to my very first teacher, actually. Yeah.
Well,
Sometimes our teachers influence us in reverse.
They do. That's it. I learned actually from my very first teacher how exactly I would never want to be.
Me too.
I understand.
Since I had some really great teachers, but look, she was good, but she it was. I learned exactly like, okay, that was the experience, and I took that away, and that became my philosophy and in the way I approach everything.
That's terrific. Well, my first teacher did the same. When I started teaching and started thinking of how I was going to do it, there began the search of there's got to be a better way to teach piano than the way I was taught, and that really both me and Paul and I met up and we developed Forte. But from that germ, and for us, Paul and I, kids with dyslexia often learn very well by ear and physical touch. And so whilst playing games around note recognition is a great thing to build those reading skills over time, perhaps it would be better to go down the track of connecting music to this child on an aural and physical level. So Melody, you've got a fab way of introducing some technical concepts using a kinesthetic approach. Can you talk us through these?
Yes, sure. I am a big fan of using games in my lessons, especially with a slightly younger students, because I believe that as teachers, our job is really to create a bridge to help the students connect with whatever elements that we're trying to teach them. And quite often when we use adult language, they just don't get it because they're not adults. And so often using games to make that connection, it can be fun, which means they're going to remember it, they're going to retain that memory for longer, and then more willing to practice it at home. So one of the things that we did a while ago was I realized that, when we first teach beginners staccatos, all of us pretty much would say, okay, these are short, they're jumpy notes. So students would play them very short and very jumpy. Except when we introduce them to maybe one of their first Baroque menuets and they come across a crotchet that has a staccato dot on it, they play it super short, right? Mm-hmm. And I was having a lesson with a student, and for maybe a couple of weeks, I said, okay, these are longer staccatos, you play like this. And it just didn't really sink in. And then so I remembered that one of the master classes I attended, the teacher said, oh, these are more like a sticky staccato. And I thought, okay, well, I've got a jar of Play-Doh lying around up over there. So maybe I could use this because it's kind of sticky. So the idea is that if you create a little Play-Doh ball on your hand, and if you play it really fast, like a fast staccato, nothing happens to it, right? But if you play it in a deeper, slower way, and you lift your wrist just in the right way, this Play-Doh gets stuck on your finger, and now this finger has a Play-Doh hat, which students love. And so we go and we basically have a competition to see who can get the most hats on their fingers. And I hope none of my students are watching this, but I almost always let them win. So.
We've got a video to show about that, how that works.
This is so random.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So I think that little game, it would work because the next week the student came back and she had really good articulation. So it really stuck with her. And of course, we had a lot of fun making these little Play-Doh balls on the piano.
That's right. And you could keep on going. Make sure you hold, you could have gone talking about, oh no, you need to hold them on longer. And she would have said yes, and then come back next week and it wasn't. So that taking that little bit of time out in the lesson to do that was really well worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it's all worth it when you see the sparkle in their eyes and, I get to play with Play-Doh again. So
Exactly. And you had another one as well? Did you have one with the rocking hand?
Oh yes, so this is to do with the ebook that I've been working on with Ray DeLeo. So I first went to Ray as an 18-year-old with a lot of pain and a lot of tension in my playing, and so she was basically the person that fixed me and put me back all together, so I could go on and pursue a career in music. So a year ago that Ray decided that she'll use her research and write an ebook. So it's kind of worked together and created this ebook together. And so with Ray's approach, what I love about her approach is that she's so concise and her instructions are so easy to understand. And these exercises, when applied correctly, they just show really, really quick results. And of course, when students see results quickly and they can hear the difference, they're more likely to practice it. So this little video is of a student about a grade 5 and 6 level, and she's learning the Bergmuller Storm, which has a lot of these very fast broken octaves in her right hand. And so in the video, you see that to start with, she has quite a lot of tension in her hand, and she wasn't really using that rotation movement to free up her arm. So we quickly went into the ebook. We showed her a video of the demonstration video. We had a go at the exercise, and the results you can see for yourself is really, really incredible. Student, she knows about the rotation technique. She just didn't think to apply it into the piece. But I mean, it sounds like she's gone away and practiced for a couple of weeks, In actual fact, in the lesson, it was probably less than 10 minutes of working on this little passage.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, I did think that she went home for a couple of weeks, but wow, that's it's sometimes just saying the right thing and feeling it. Good for you.
That's right, yeah. So those demonstration videos is actually I was the exercise model that did all the videos, and so my students are always like amazed that, oh, so you're in this book. But I think because the videos are shot in a way that it's very clear to the observer what movements they're trying to achieve. Sometimes I find it easier to show the students the video rather than actually demonstrating it to them, because they're seeing it at the right angle. Yeah.
And you're both seeing it together. It's like that coaching approach. You're both,
that's right. Yeah.
Both spectators at the same time. Just terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, we'd like to bring you panelists on the future shows that can share their amazing expertise just like that to help you with challenges that you're having in your piano teaching. So we'd love to have the answer to this question, which is, when it comes to piano teaching, what's your greatest challenge? So if you're watching us live, if you haven't got the chat open, just click that now. And if you are watching us and you've got your chat open, please just jot your thoughts into the chat window. So the question once again is, when it comes to piano teaching, what's your greatest challenge? So as you type your answer, we're going to share with you a special gift we have for you today. We've added to our gifts section. And so here's Paul to show you.
Gillian and I have added to the teacher resource kit again. This week we have a keyboard chart that comes with all these cute tabs. This is great for online lessons and face-to-face lessons. There's a keyboard and these cute tabs to put on the keyboard. Just print the pages out from the PDF in colour, laminate them, and there's only one fiddly bit, which is cutting up the keyboard chart tabs. You could put Velcro on the tabs and the keyboard, or I just used blue tack. Then you can use them in your lessons just like this.
What's that? It's a dog. D for dog. There we go. And it's a B. A B. There we go. And let's have a look. E lives right on the bottom line. Have a look.
If you're already a member, just log in or register at pianoteachingsuccess.com.
Well, with all of our talk about reading and props today, it's been very relevant. And, Bradley, you've been teaching online for ages and you've got your real suite of props there, haven't you, which to make it easier.
But sorry, did I miss a question about that?
No.
Okay.
Well, when we were asked this question last week, Linda Poelzer from Alberta in Canada and Carol Horman, which I think she's from Australia, said that they found teaching complex rhythms and complicated rhythms the most challenging. So we have two composers or improvising composers here, along with Melody today, and who likes to find interesting ways to solve problems like this. So I thought I might ask them, Bradley, what do you
Yes. What do I do for complicated rhythms? I talked a little bit about with the rhythm board earlier, but whether the board's present or not, to me, all rhythms are either on or off. They're either on the beat or off the beat. And so we just talk at an eighth note level. The on beats are quarters, and the ones in between are eighth notes. And any 16th note rhythm can be regarded as the same way simply by speeding up the pulse. So let me just give a demonstration for that. This is one of an easy exercise that can be made much more complicated. So I have here under my foot a timekeeper. It's just a little, I just may as well share it. It's just a device I made of a drum pedal hooked to a wood block, so I can keep a beat. And I'm going to clap with that beat 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This time I'm going to clap in between the beats. Okay, so now I'm sensing my rhythm in reference to the pulse. So I'm going to do 4 on, 4 off. Here's back on. Here's off. And now I don't want to get too into this because of the time constraints, but we then can, for a more advanced student, begin to rotate when they're on and off. And so we come up with patterns such as this. On, off, off, on. And all the various, there's actually 8 permutations of having 4 on and 4 off. And so to me, reading the rhythm is secondary to feeling it, and then we can read it as a way that the composer preserved that. So to me, it's location and the duration of a note is, important for knowing when to release, is not important as to when to attack. So duration for me trumps location. I said it backwards. Location trumps duration. On and off.
Do you get your students to, do you have your foot pedal so that they can actually hear that, and you ask them to tap with their foot?
Yeah, or with a drum machine. Let me just show you how it can be made a lot more fun. So if we have, on, off. So then you can come up with all kinds of very kind of cool Latin rhythms, Let's do 1 on, 4 off, 3 on. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So that's more of a jazzy sound, but it still comes down to, we'll go back to London Bridge, which is where we have that dotted thing, that hard to learn dotted thing. It's not hard to feel a dot if we forget duration and rather think of it as being between the beats. London Bridge. That's the way I approach rhythms.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you approaching in that mathematical formula, that's where you get all these weird sounding things that actually don't sound like that. Like, oh, 1, 2, and the counting thing. It's not necessarily. It really is a kinesthetic rhythm.
It is. I think rhythm is not math; it's motion, and the written rhythm is just a document of motion.
Exactly. So, Brad, Eustace.
Yeah, actually, pretty similar here. I actually take away the elements as well. Take it back to just basic percussion sounds. If we're doing 2 different rhythms at the same time, I may even do keyboard percussion, like put a percussion sound on the instrument, a low and a high sound. So there's a big difference between those 2 parts. And if we can't do that, then we'll do it on our person, on the body. And then when we're ready to move to the keyboard to add the notes, I actually use a percussive sound, like with no reverb added to it, like a xylophone or a pizzicato string, because then you can clearly hear any rhythmical error. Sometimes the piano sound can hide those mistakes, whereas if you use a percussive sound, I found particularly when you're trying to get that rhythmical accuracy, the percussive sound I found to be really invaluable with that. And then if they're on something they can record, I'll get them to record their playing, and then play it back to them. And if it has, like on some of the instruments, a score display, they can see their thing. So, and we'll even do an A/B. So if you've got a teenager who knows everything, as we know, and they're assuring me that this is correct, I'm thinking, no, not quite. I don't think so. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, you play it in. So we play it on channel 1. And then I said, I'll play it in on channel 2. And then we will compare my score to the original score and your score, and we'll see which one is correct. Hopefully I get it right. But it just nips it in the bud, it's really good. Yeah, but I found the percussive thing in particular is being really useful for those, removing that melodic and keeping it percussive.
Brad, are you using an actual percussion instrument, or are you talking more of a percussion patch on your clavinova?
Percussion patch. It's just less is easy. There's less things to have around. So like a bass drum and a woodblock. Yeah, really, really simple.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think the 2 pitches is really important. They need to be very different in sound. And then if it's getting a little bit, if it is quite a complex rhythm, I'll actually record something in, and then we will play along with me doing that. And it has the advantage of quantizing too, okay, just in case I'm a little bit out. It can correct me, so which is good, because you don't want, teachers are always perfect. So we need to present perfection.
Oh dear, the attainable goal. Unattainable goal, maybe. So Paul's been teaching some of Brad's arrangements to his kids, actually, and they have some complicated rhythms in them. So here's Paul talking to Brad about his work.
Hey Brad, I got your In the Hall of the Mountain King for my class on Friday afternoons. These kids are in year 6 and 7 at school, and they're doing grade 6 piano. And I got it as a bit of a sight reading exercise, and I pulled up your YouTube channel, and they're a bit concerned because you only had 112 views. And so they said, it can't be very good. I went, no, just listen. And we played it. And they went, that's awesome. And they've decided to make your YouTube channel to tell all their friends. And you're up to 185 views already.
Great.
It's called In the Hall of the Mountain King. So I'm doing it with 7 students at the one time. But
My
you
goodness.
could do this with a duo or a trio. What else can you do?
Yeah, so there's a solo version,
Mm-hmm.
and the ensemble can be played as a duet, trio, or quartet. You can have them on individual instruments if you've got that many available, or I've even had 4 kids play it on one instrument, which is fun. They were very small kids. And then, but it works as a duet, so you can, or trio, depending on the leveling of the student. But it's really about the fun. It's very fun. That was the intention.
It certainly is very fun. And we're actually going to play it at the end of the show today. So stick around and you'll be able to watch it. I saw a couple of the other pieces that you've got, and one is The House of the Rising Sun.
Yep.
Which is a traditional song. So I thought I'd share everyone a little bit of a clip of it. What standard is it, do you reckon?
Oh, about grade 8, Amy B.
So
leveling.
that's fairly advanced.
Advanced, yeah.
Yes. It sounds like it's the soundtrack to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and it's got the ostinato like bass pattern. Rhythmically, and then some flashy, as you get further in, some flashy crossovers, which look hard, but they're actually quite tricky, quite easy, because you actually just play the same thing as you go up the arpeggio. You're doing a lot of pieces for students, or you've done a lot of pieces for students, and you were telling me a story about one of your students. I think she was 7 and wouldn't practice the scales. No, so I had a student. She was a 7-year-old. She was very advanced for her level, but would not practice her chromatic scales. So we were working towards an exam, and I was looking at it and thinking, no, this is not going to happen. So, and she really, really wanted to do Greensleeves. So I did a jazzed up version of Greensleeves, and I stuck a 4-octave chromatic scale on the right hand, and a 3-octave chromatic scale on the left hand in the middle. It was a lot harder because you had this bass line to play and the chromatic, so she had to really work on it. But I got my goal. I got my scale practice in, and she got a fun piece at the same time. That's awesome, Brad. Thank you. And we're very excited that that your music is now going to be available for digital download from blackrockmusic.com.au and blackrockmusic.co.uk. Wow. Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, there certainly were some complicated rhythms in amongst all of that. We have to put those strategies that we just talked about earlier into action. And we are going to play that Hall of the Mountain King at the end. It's so different from anything I've seen. So I've just asked Paul, we can play a snippet of that. We're just going to play the end bit, because I think you've even taken it to a whole new level, because you've almost put interpretation into this one as well with these little, I'm not going to even say it. We'll just throw the video. saying that, right? When you
It is. It's the emotion. Actually, each emoji is the character of that particular moment. So there's a bit that even has a little bit of kisses in there, and it goes, and, and then there's the bass player with the hat, and so emoji plays the piano. So it's a bit of fun.
It is. Okay, you're right. Did you put every single one of those little emojis in on your own? Or
Yeah, that was all me. Yeah, 100%. So we had to. It was a bit of time. So it was a bit
lot
of
of time.
motion effects, and there's the clavinova was the backing musician, like backing track, and then there was a thing called dysclavia, which is a piano that plays, but obviously I was playing on a different one, and then it was moving the keys.
Oh, it's just amazing. It was certainly a love job. It would have taken hours, I'm sure.
A bit of fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank Bradley Sowash, Melody Deng, and Bradley Eustace for being with us today. And as I said, we've been here for you through this virus, and we've loved being here every week, bringing you answers to your questions. And now that the worst of it is over and things are starting to open again, and our lives are starting to get a little bit back to normality, what is really clear is that a show like this for our community is kind of really welcomed, and we love being here for you. So we've decided to continue the show on a fortnightly basis. And so we can bring you more answers to your questions and interviews and amazing guests and teaching ideas and some free little goodies as well. So, and I really would like to thank you so much for your lovely words of encouragement that you've left for us all over the place in Facebook groups and also on our site. It really has meant so much to Paul and I. And it's given us a bit of extra pep and energy when it's been such a marathon bringing this to you every week. So as always, if you're on our watch list, you'll receive this episode into your inbox, or you can catch the replay on our Facebook group. And next week, we have, in 2 weeks' time, we have another amazing panel for you. And we have a very, very special guest in Dennis Alexander. And need I say more? Our students, your students love playing Dennis Alexander. I'm sure you love playing Dennis Alexander. He's just so lovely. And he's been teaching a few students online as well. We have Yolanda Freilink, who is president of the Queensland Music Teachers Association, and she loves teaching beginners and using many teaching modalities. So we've talked a lot about visual auditory kinesthetic ways. So Yolanda will also be here to share some of that. Michael Power is a collaborative pianist and teacher, and he's based in Hobart. That's the little island off the bottom of the mainland of Australia for our overseas guests. So if you'd like to ask a question, it could be a general question or a particular question for one of our panelists. There's 3 ways you can do that. You can send us an email, or you can post it in our Facebook group, or you can click Ask the Question button on our website. I'd like to thank Paul Mead, who's been producing today's show and is responsible for the videos and all of the behind-the-scenes tech. We're going to go out today to this great arrangement of Hall of the Mountain King by Brad Eustace. I just love this video. It's so much fun. On behalf of all of us, stay well, and we'll see you next Thursday. 2 weeks. Bye.